All right, good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. All right, remember, folks, this show does not run on freedom fumes alone. If you're watching me on Rumble, smash that green dollar sign so that you can drop a Rumble rant. It's kind of like tossing me a cold one this early in the morning, which keeps the vibes high and the mics on. And if you want to go all in, well, then click that subscribe for just $5 a month. Your support helps me fight the good fight. All right, let's get into it. Okay, first and foremost, my voice is kind of jacked up. I've been having a rough couple days here, so I may have to, I'll try not to clear my throat too much today. And I got some changes here that if you've watched my show before, you'll know that normally I have like my microphone arm that comes down from the right, or my right. And now I have a microphone stand. So let me know how the audio sounds. I think that I got to be careful not to like move too far away so that the audio doesn't get picked up. So let me know if it's not working or if I need to make any changes. We'll take care of that. Now let me address something. What in the heck happened yesterday? Like, there was no show. And then I even put out, I was like, I'm going to do a noon show. I promise you, I have a good lame excuse for it. Okay? Still a lame excuse, but I think it's a good one. So Monday, I had a work project that kind of took me into after hours. And I ended up working on it even late into the evening. And when I say late, I went to bed after midnight. I was actually done, I think, with that work project and dropped some things for some people because there was just a critical thing that happened kind of like last minute. We were trying to scramble and get something taken care of for another team. And I ended up, working late. And no big deal. Like, that happens from time to time. It's okay. And so I went to bed, and then I just didn't wake up on time. I mean, I did wake up, obviously, but I didn't wake up on time. And so I got up, and it was like 7 o'clock that I woke up. Like 7 o'clock. Like, normally I'm up by like 5, but I woke up by like 7. And so I was like, there's no way that I'm going to be putting together a show this morning. And so I was just like, all right, well, I can do it at noon, because I had taken off Tuesday because my son had Monday and Tuesday off, and it didn't occur to me, until like Saturday that maybe I might want to take one of those days off, or maybe even both of those days off, and then spend a little time with him, hang out. And so I actually was at work Monday, which is good because I needed to be there anyway. And then Tuesday, I was like, all right, I'm going to take the day off. I'm just going to have, I got some PTO time, and my boss is always giving me a hard time. They're like, yo, the whole team, actually, hey, will you guys please take some PTO before the end of the year? And we're like, okay, we'll get around to taking some PTO. We just don't, like, our team, for whatever reason, we just don't really take a lot of PTO. And then we have to scramble at the end of the year to try to get our PTO taken before we lose a bunch of it. Anyway, so I was like, I need to take some PTO anyway. And so I decided I would take Tuesday. And then, while all this is happening, my wife had, had a friend, and her son is also out of school because they were out of school for Columbus Day, or Indigenous Peoples Day, or Liberty Dad Day, if you heard the show on Monday. And so my son was out that day, and then for whatever, I guess they were using Tuesday as a planning day or something. I don't really know. And so then my son was out of school. So she was like, hey, she told her friend, she's like, why don't you drop off your son and he can just hang out at our house. And so the boys got to hang out Monday, much of the day, and then Tuesday, much of the day. And so then yesterday, I wake up late, and I'm like, okay, no big deal. I will just do a show at noon, and it's going to be really easy because I'm not even working today. It's not like, because normally I can't necessarily promise to do a show during noon, because if I wake up late, well, then I go to work, and I can't prep for a show if I'm working. And so the idea of like, if I already have something prepped, or if I can do something kind of on the fly with very little prep, then yeah, I can do a show during noon. And sometimes it does happen when I make a mistake or whatever. And so I was like, oh, I could do this. But it didn't occur to me that I was going to have 2 boys in the house, and I'm basically playing stay-at-home dad with these 2 boys. And so, it's not like there's a lot to manage, but I'm doing, whatever, making sure that they get lunch and, one's like, my son is 6 and his friend's a little bit older. And so, I'm like, all right, well, I'll take you guys for a walk. We'll walk around this particular area of the neighborhood and see if you guys can like ride your bicycles, and then I'll let you guys go on your own if you want. And then by the time we got back, they didn't want to. They were like, we're done. We've had our plenty of, whatever. And so, so I'm kind of basically managing. And then at like 1, or maybe, no, I'm sorry, it was like 12:15. I have to look, but it was like 12:30, 12:15, something like that. I get a message from that Liberty lady, and she's like, so no show. And I was like, oh my gosh. Actually, I think I said something less appropriate. Not like mean, like just, you know how chats are, right? People talk in chats in ways they may not talk on their podcast or publicly. We're going to get into that. And so I was like, oh, shoot. And so I was like, I guess I'm not doing a show because I've got things going on. I'm literally in the middle of it. So that's where I was yesterday. I apologize, folks. I do try to make sure that come 7:30, Monday through Friday, there is a show, right? I can't advertise and say there's going to be a show and then not deliver. That's not how this works. And I try to treat this as a job. I know it's not my bread and butter, but I try to treat it as a job. Because if I'm asking you to be available at 7:30, then I need to be available at 7:30. That's called integrity. Speaking of integrity, we're going to talk about that. Let me hit the chat a little bit here, and let's talk. Let's see what you guys are saying up in the chat here. So Spelljammer, welcome. I don't think I've seen you before, but if you've been here and I've just forgotten, I apologize. What is leaking, Dad? We're going to talk about some chats that got divulged from Politico. That's going to be an interesting conversation. Let's see. Keith says sound is okay. Good. But let me know throughout the show if something, like if I stray too far away, you might say, hey, DL, if you move too much to the right or the left or something like that, the sound kind of drops or something. Just let me know if there's anything along that line, and then I'll take care of it. And I think we wanted to draw, actually, let's bring down the music a little bit. There we go. All right, let's make sure the music is not too loud. I think somebody mentioned it a while back. They were like, hey, the music, the background music while you're doing the chats is a little bit loud. Let's see, what else? Yes, problem solvers tend to focus on real problems. Yes. There are real problems in the world to solve. Oh, look at that. I think I've made it. Not even making it. I've made it. Mentioned Liberty Dad Day on Evening Space. When my stuff goes into another chat, that's me making it. I've hit the big times, just not with the money part. Work in progress. We'll get there. No worries. All right, folks, let's get into this. Let's see what we're going to talk about today. So Politico, and I'm going to put it up on the screen here for you guys to see. Where are you here? I got to find it. Okay, so let's do this here. Where are you? Okay, why are you not cooperating? I got the article up here. Here's the article. And then let's see here. We're going to talk about it. Clicking the wrong buttons here. I have it's always that I have everything set up except for that one thing. And so here we are. Okay. And then what in the world? Why is it doing that? Oh, there. How about that? There we go. Okay, there we are. All right, I'll get my act together, folks. Like, you take one day off, even by accident, and it's like you forget how to stream. What in the world? Okay, so here's this Political article, and let's see what it says. I love Hitler. Leaked messages exposed young Republicans' racist chat. Thousands of private messages reveal young GOP leaders joking about gas chambers, slavery, and rape. And then they got a picture here of a whole bunch of these comments, and I'll read a couple to you. Now these are out of context, okay? So we don't have the context under which these were made. Not to say that, I hate to say that because it's like everybody always says it. They're like, oh, it's just out of context. And sometimes you don't really need any additional context, Like if you say, I hate this person, I hope they die. Right? Like there's not a whole lot of context that's going to make that be like, oh, okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah, it makes sense. Right? Sometimes there is, maybe, but you get what I'm saying. Like sometimes you just don't need any other context, and other times maybe the context does matter. So, but a lot of people like to kind of what I say hide behind context, like that was taken out of context. Like no, actually, in or out of context, it's still pretty bad. So some of these, you're giving nationals too much credit and expecting the Jew to be honest. Like that's not a lot of context that's going to make that better. Like you're literally just saying like Jewish people are dishonest. There's not or a Jew, like it says the Jew. So it's not about I think somebody in particular, and then somebody else. Great, I love Hitler. Okay, and let's see what else. If we ever had a leak of this chat, we would be cooked for real, for real. Okay, like okay. So if you're acknowledging like, hey, this chat, if it gets leaked, things are going south for us. Probably not a good idea to be having that chat, but we're going to get into this, okay? We're going to talk about this because I have some thoughts, and no, it's not just going to be just raw condemnation, okay? We're going to have an honest conversation here because I'm dad, and I'm the most objective libertarian in America. So we're going to have an honest conversation. Let's see what this article says. Let me zoom in on it a little bit so that it's more bigger. All right. Leaders of young Republican groups throughout the country worried what would happen if their Telegram chat ever got leaked, but they kept typing anyway. Now, remember, these are young Republicans. I don't know how old they necessarily need to be, but they are young. So I'm going to assume that they're in college age range. And I'm going to lead with college age people say terrible things for many number of reasons. Just the simplest reason is, hey, you're young, and when I was in my 20s, I promise you, I said some pretty foul things just because I'm having fun with my buddies, so on and so forth. Okay? Maybe I was mad. Maybe I thought something was funny that I wouldn't think now. I mean, I'm 47. Okay? So 47, and let's just say 20 years ago, 27. There's going to be some pronounced differences in how I think and how I behave publicly and privately. Did you grow, presumably? Okay? They referred to black people as monkeys and the watermelon people and mused about putting their political opponents in gas chambers. They talked about raping their enemies and driving them to suicide and lauded Republicans who they believed support slavery. These are not good things. Okay? Like that's like if you want to joke about a group of people, fine. I get that. Okay? And I've said many times before, on this show, I try to keep it family friendly, and my personal opinion about my public persona is I try to keep it dignified. It doesn't always happen. There's been a few moments where, like I get out of hand and, maybe somebody in the chat might need to be like, DL, just calm down. It's okay, man. Things are going to be all right. So we all get that way. I totally get it. But there should be some lines in the sand that we draw, and then we say, okay, we're not going to cross this line because that's not who we are. That's not who we want to be. Okay? Now, again, I will say that there's a difference between somebody who's 27 and 47. So I'm going to be a little bit more flexible with the 27-year-olds. Are these things that we want our 27-year-olds to say? No. Are they things that they should let's say, should they be run out of public life forever over it? Also, no. I think that's a bit extreme because, again, there's a difference between 27 and 47. If I were to say some of these things and they came out and, then perhaps you run me out of town, all right? Or I need to figure out how to make amends, whatever. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But these are definitely not good things, okay? And the real problem here is not that they've said a few nasty things. The real problem is that they've said so many, and the Republican Party likes to bill itself as the party of morality. That's the real problem. Let's continue reading. We'll talk more about this. William Hendricks, the Kansas Young Republicans vice chair, used the words nigga, and I don't really understand the difference here. Like, it looks like he's, if you pronounce it, they would be the same word, nigga, right? Just written differently with different spelling. Okay, variations of a racial slur more than a dozen times in the chat. Now, this is one where I would say the context kind of matters. Okay, and here's why. There are two forms of the N word. There's the hard R. We all know what that one is. And then there's like the one that ends in A. This is the one we hear in rap songs all the time. This is the one where you hear people referring to each other like, what's up, my nigga? You know, like, so it's in some sense a term of endearment. Like basically saying, what's up, buddy? Right? So the context here would matter, I think, in my opinion. And you could disagree with me, that's fine. Bobby Walker, the vice chair of the New York State Republicans at the time, referred to rape as epic. Okay? I don't think that there's any context for which I would say, okay, I totally get it. However, there might be some context that might at least make it less terrible. Like, still terrible, but just not as... Like, when you read this, you're like, wow, that just sounds terrible. You said rape is epic? Like, what? That's insane. Okay, Peter Giunta, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, who at the time was the chair of the same organization, wrote in a message sent in June that everyone that votes no is going to the gas chamber. Okay, that one I'm kind of like it's not appropriate, but I'm kind of like, I don't know about that one. Right, you see the problem here? We've got a mix of things for which some of them you could say, yeah, this is not a big deal. This is when you could be like, whoa, this is a big deal, right? You know, so it's a mix. But what's going to happen is they all get lumped together, and then we view the whole as equivalent to the worst. That's the problem. Okay, Giunta was referring to an upcoming vote on whether he should become chair of the Young Republican National Federation, the GOP's 15,000-member political organization for Republicans between 18 and 40 years old. Okay, so like again, if you're I don't know how old these guys are, but I'm just pretending that they're all 27. So if you're 27 years old and you're joking with your buddies and you're like, man, everybody that votes no is going to the gas chamber, I realize you're more than likely making a joke. When I say more than likely, like almost certainly. Okay, is it a good joke? No, it's not. But can we be honest here? Jokes have any kind of humor. Someone or something is the brunt of a joke. That's why it's funny. And I want you to think about any joke you've ever heard. Somebody's being made fun of, or something is being made fun of. Like, that's the whole point of humor. You're making fun of something, and underlying it is either a truth or a stereotype, which may be based on some level of truth. Okay? So any kind of humor, when you're joking about something, is going to be someone or something is going to be the butt of the joke. So I don't necessarily have a problem with this one. Is it appropriate? You could make an argument, say, come on, guys. Like, for me, if all of the conversations were basically everyone who votes no is going to the gas chamber, I would probably look at it and I would say, you know what, guys, come on. You're old enough to know better. Come on. Like, again, you're 27, so I get it. You're still foolish. You're not 47. And even at 47, look, I've been with other men around the fire pit. And I tell my friends, I'm like, you never know what I'll say. I'll say some funny thing. Because we're around the fire pit. We're hanging. We're, having some beers or whatever, some cigars, and we're joking. We're saying inappropriate things. And to me, that's okay, right? And so it's a matter of time and place. And what are you talking about? And to what degree? And if somebody wants to make a racist joke, fine. I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I don't have a problem if you make a joke based on some stereotype. I think, again, the problem here is that there's so many and that the Republicans have billed themselves as basically the party of morality. That's the real big problem. We're going to talk more about that. I'm going to create some of the greatest physiological torture methods known to man. We only want true believers, he continued. 2 members of the chat responded. And then here's the response. So everyone that votes no is going to the gas chamber. Everyone that endorsed but then votes for us going to the gas chamber. When do we start bullying, dude? We have solid three people who can probably have them want to jump. If they vote for us, why would they be gassed? When do we bring that side out? I'm going to create some of the greatest physiological torture methods known to man. Let's see. We only want true believers. Can we fix the showers? Gas chambers don't fit the Hitler aesthetic. I'm ready to watch people burn now. We got to pretend we like them. Hey, come on in. Take a nice shower and relax. Boom, they're dead. Okay, like it's getting a little out of hand here, guys. like if you just make a comment, a simple comment, and you say, all right, look, if you don't vote for me, I'm sending you to the gas chamber. Okay, it's not appropriate. It's not good. But, okay, fine. I'm not going to make a big thing. But if you guys just continue on, okay, now you're definitely engaging in young person behavior. And I know people will argue with me, like, oh, I didn't say that when okay, I get it. You didn't say that. Great. You're this great moral, upstanding person. Stop lying. Everybody has said something inappropriate at some point. Okay? Like, unless your name is Jesus Christ, you have said something foul and nasty. Okay? Just stop pretending. And you've laughed at a joke that you shouldn't have laughed at, right? So let's be honest. Are they taking it a bit far here? Kind of. Do I understand the context here? Also, yes, I do. I get it. They're making a joke. Are they really going to send people to the gas chamber? No, I don't think so. I don't believe that for a minute. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go down. I'm trying to get past where they just repeating the same chat. The exchange is part of a trove of Telegram chats obtained by Politico and spanning more than 7 months of messages among young Republican leaders in New York, Kansas, Arizona, and Vermont. The chat offers an unfiltered look at how a new generation of GOP activists talk when they think no one is listening. Okay, this is where I'm going to take my first issue with Politico. They are lying. Okay, the chat offers an unfiltered look at how a new generation of GOP activists talk when they think no. This chat offers an unfiltered look at how people in general might talk when they think no one is listening. And you might say, well, DL, I would never joke about gas chambers. No, but you might joke about other things. Our family, we like inviting people over to our house. I've had many people over of all political stripes, and we have laughed and joked at our dining room table about things that maybe aren't quite as bad, but are not appropriate. Okay? Left, right, libertarian, it doesn't matter. Something has been said that's not appropriate. Period. Okay? So let's this is my first issue with this political article is that they're pretending as if this is like some new thing that is only limited to these young GOP. Stop it. Just stop. You're not even being honest. Since Politico began making inquiries, one member of the group chat is no longer employed at their job, and another's job offer was rescinded. So I got to know the context here. So let's see here. Prominent New York Republicans including Representative Elise Stefanik and State Senate Minority Leader Rob Ort, have denounced the chat, and festering resentments among young Republicans have now turned into public tongue-tied recriminations, including allegations of a character assassination and extortion. Okay, so I don't think it needs to get to the level where we start trying to cancel people. Okay, we're going to talk about that. The Young Republicans, the national organization came out with a statement. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how people responded. Okay, I don't think people necessarily should lose their jobs over this. I think we need to have a sit down with our young people and say, like, hey, maybe you need to take a break. And it depends, right, on what was said in there. If you just laughed at something, I don't really care about that. If you said, a bunch of really nasty things about, let's say, black people, perhaps you take a cooling off period until you can learn to, bite your tongue. We're not going to be able to stop people from saying or from thinking bad things. And I'm not going to pretend like this white person over here that made, a watermelon people joke. I'm not going to pretend as if them saying it out loud is somehow unique and nobody in the black community thinks or much less says foul things about white people. Okay? Let's stop pretending that people don't say bad things about other people. Okay? Like, even my wife is pretty nice, and sometimes you'll catch her, she'll be mad at somebody, and she'll be like, that a-hole. Right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this happens. Like, people get irritated and frustrated. So let's stop pretending. This is my biggest problem with this kind of reporting, is that we'll get this from like a Politico toward the Republicans, but you're not going to see too much Politico reporting similar things from the Democrats. And let's not, don't even try to pass off like, oh, the Democrats don't talk. Please. Please. We just watched, after Charlie Kirk died, video after video after video of people on the left celebrating, not even just saying something foul like, well, I guess he deserved it because he supported guns, right? Which would be pretty foul in itself. But they celebrated. They're like, I'm happy. I'm excited. This is great news. I'm going to sleep so much better tonight, right? Like, you know, so again, I want to keep this in perspective. This is not a right thing. This is not a left thing. This is a human thing. And I think even at my age, it still happens. I think what we need to start being mindful of is the time and the place for when we make these kind of jokes. Let me just finish reading this. The 2,900 pages of chats shared among a dozen millennial and Gen Z Republicans between early January and mid-August chronicle their campaign to seize control of the National Young Republican Organization on a hardline pro-Donald Trump platform. Many of the chat members already work inside government or party politics, and one serves as a state senator. Okay, this, I think, is the biggest problem with this dump, okay, this dump of chats, is that, number one, there's so many of them. Okay, if it's like a one-off conversation, somebody divulges a chat, and it's like somebody made a one-off comment, okay, you could be like, yeah, well, he was just being stupid. But when they make one off and then another one off, and it becomes 10, 20, 30 offs, right? Then all of a sudden you're like, okay, there's a problem here. But more importantly, this is about them seizing control of an organization. So it makes them look exactly like many of their opponents claim they are, which is bigoted and racist. If somebody's like, you're a bigot, you're a racist, and you're like, no, I'm not. I don't see color. I love black people and Jews and whatever, right? You know, and I have a lot of friends, which are not necessarily good arguments, but if you're making those kind of arguments publicly and you're saying that you're not a certain type of person, and then we divulge all, we get somebody divulges all your chats, and you're talking exactly like somebody who is that kind of person would talk, you kind of ruin your credibility. Like, what you say matters in public and in private, but more so in private, because people tend to believe that what you say in private is what you really mean. More importantly, if it's related to politics or to you trying to run an organization, then they believe it even more. If somebody secretly recorded a few of these millennial and Gen Z folks at a fire that wasn't really like at a, you know, like they're somewhere, there's somebody's backyard. They're enjoying a Friday night out around the fire pit. It's not a political event. They're just there chilling, having fun. And they start talking up and saying some things, and let's say somebody records it all and divulges it, like, look what all these guys are saying around the fire. That would be an entirely different context, because they're not talking about, hey, let's change this organization, let's drive it in this particular direction, and let's talk foul about all of our opponents in ways that make our opponents' arguments about us sound very correct. Do you see the problem here? Like, if it's just around the fire pit, you could probably excuse that a lot easier, because you could say, like, yeah, they were just hanging out and having fun and maybe drinking a little bit and whatever. You know, people say dumb stuff when they're drinking. That's fine. You know, they spout off. You know, they're away from their professional self. They're cutting up and carrying on. Fine. right? That to me would be less of a problem. But because it's in the context of running an organization, this makes it a problem. All right. Let's see what else we got here. I don't know if I'm going to read the whole thing. We'll just try to read enough. Together, the messages reveal a culture where racist, anti-Semitic, and violent rhetoric circulate freely, and where the Trump era loosening of political norms has made such talk feel less taboo among those positioning themselves as the party's next leaders. There's some truth there, right? Like, I am old enough to remember when just saying something like that could end your political career within Republicans. They didn't want anything to do with it. They were like, nope, we're done with that. Donald Trump did change things. Now, some of it I defended, and I will hold to that. So, like, some people are like, yeah, this is basically this is their version of the grab them by the you-know-what. Okay, remember when Trump said that? And I was like, yeah, that's kind of locker room talk. People are like, that's not locker room talk. And I'm like, have you been in a locker room? Because I've been in a locker room, and that's definitely locker room talk. And it was just this conversation that was being had between him and somebody else. I think it was supposed to be off the record, right? And even in even in the context, you know, like, I think he was just boasting and saying, like, okay, when you're famous, girls basically throw themselves at you, and they let you do things that they might not let you do otherwise. I mean, that's true. You ever seen rock stars? They get all, you know, they get certain clothing thrown at them, whatever. You ever been to a rock concert where, like, maybe girls are lifting up their shirts and, you know, doing things they might not do in a different environment because it's somebody, you know, a rock star and they're famous, right? And so they get treated differently. And so there is some truth to that. And so I was like, I don't really care about that. You know, like, if it was, if it was repeated, you know, over and over and over, then you could say there's a problem. You know, do we want our presidents necessarily talking like that? No, not really. But I think that again, this all comes down to what is the environment? Where are these conversations being had? How many are they having? You know, like, these kind of things. It's not like you have to be mindful of what you say, period. End of story. Like, you do. And you have to always, especially in politics, you have to always act as if somebody's going to hear it. So, like, who was I telling? I was telling somebody this. I said, when I'm online, there's a lot of people I've seen some of my, some mutuals, people that I follow and that follow me, women, and they're like, guys, stop sending me these kind of DMs. And they're like, some of you guys, I know I'm connected with your wife. I will show her if you send me one more. I'm like, whoa, right? Nothing that I say online would I be embarrassed to show my wife. There's no DMs. There's nothing. Number one, that's not how I talk, most importantly. But also, I conduct myself so that I will never have to be embarrassed and apologize to my wife and be like, yeah, I shouldn't have said that. You know, like, if I'm scrolling and, you know, somebody that's a mutual posts a kind of lurid photo, you know, like a photo that shows their cleavage or something, I don't get it. You know, I don't post a winking emoji. I don't post at all. But I don't, you know, I definitely wouldn't post a winking emoji or anything like that. Right? Because then if my wife saw it, she might be like, what's going on here? Right? I conduct myself, number one, according to what I believe is appropriate for me. Then I conduct myself what I believe is appropriate for the situation. Okay? And so then always, if somebody tries to hold me accountable, I can be like, yeah, I was, you know, I have a defense for it. Now, is that always true? No. I mean, you know, everybody. There are chats where you might find them and say, DL, why'd you say that? Like, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't have said that. Okay? But again, it's about how you conduct yourself, how you present yourself. And I think this is part of the problem. But the bigger problem is that the Republican Party, they present themselves as the moral party. Just in the last few days, a lot of conservative Republicans online are talking about banning porn, and they're not talking about it for any, you know, like they're talking about for moral reasons. They're like, oh, this is immoral. This is bad for your soul. Like, okay, I might agree, but I think there's some First Amendment problems here. Okay, so again, they keep presenting themselves as the moral party. So frustrating. Let's see here. The dynamic of easy racism and casual cruelty played out in an often dark, vivid fashion inside the chats, where campaign talk and party gossip blurred into streams of slurs and violent fantasies. See the problem here? This is not around the fireplace or the fire pit. This is not, we were at the bar drinking and got a little carried away with what we were saying. That's the problem. Oh man, I don't know. Okay, I think I'm done reading this article. I'm not going to try to read the whole thing to you. It's in the show notes. You can go and read the whole thing. So here's what the young Republicans came out and said. And let me put that up on the screen here. So they came out and they said, we are appalled. Hold on, I'm trying to zoom in on it for myself. We are appalled by the vile and inexcusable language revealed in the Politico article published today. Such behavior is disgraceful, unbecoming of any Republican, and stands in direct opposition to the values our movement represents. Okay? And they're not wrong. The Republican Party continually presents itself as a values-based movement. They care about children, right? That's why they oppose a lot of the trans stuff. You know, that's why they oppose a lot of the DEI stuff, you know, because they're like, look, our kids don't need to be involved in all our politics. We don't need all of this stuff. Just teach them to read, to write, and to be nice to each other. You know, keep it simple for them. They otherwise are going to be just fine. You know, we don't need to drag them in and try to inculcate them into all of our political ideas, right? They talk, speaking of DEI, they're the party of, hey, we're the party of meritocracy. You know, we believe in God. We go to church on a regular basis, not all of them, but many of them, right? We believe in these church values. They present themselves that way. Okay, well, if you present yourself that way, act that way, even when nobody is looking. Those involved must immediately resign from all positions within their state and local young Republican organizations. We must hold ourselves to the highest standards of integrity, respect, and professionalism. Now, what was not in here? They didn't say, hey, we can't occasionally cut up and carry on. They didn't say, like, hey, we shouldn't ever be caught saying a bad word or making a bad joke or laughing at an offensive joke. I mean, come on, folks. I grew up on, what was that show? Def Comedy Jam. I'm very acquainted with poor jokes. Well, maybe not poor jokes, but jokes in poor taste or bad taste or offensive. We'll call it that. I'm very acquainted with offensive jokes. There is a time and a place for things. All right? And I think when it's in the context of your politics and operating a political party, they are absolutely correct. You must hold yourself to the highest standard of integrity, respect, and professionalism. And then you separate your professional life from your private life. When I step into work, I behave myself mostly. I sometimes cut up a little bit. When I'm on my podcast, I behave myself mostly. Okay? Sometimes I get a little bit passionate. When I step around the fire pit, I do not necessarily behave myself. It depends. What's the conversation? Are there lines that I draw and I don't talk about certain things or I don't say certain things, even if I think them? Yes. Am I more liberal with what I'm willing to say? Also, yes. I don't hide that, and I don't pretend otherwise. I tell people, like, look, if you catch me at the bar with some friends, you might hear me say some inappropriate things. That's how I operate, and I don't hide it. Because I want people to know that I know when to be professional, when to cut up and carry on. So, for example, right now my son is 6. He goes to school and he comes home and, like, if I say, like, man, that's stupid, he's like, Dad, that's a bad word. And I'm like, oh, gosh, yes. And here's my real beef. It's that I don't believe that there are bad words. what I believe is that there are words that are not appropriate for certain venues or certain time and place. If somebody's loved one just died, you don't make a joke like if let's say, somebody's loved one died of cancer. That's not the time for a cancer joke. Okay? It's not the time for it. There may be some other time where you can make a cancer joke. And yes, everything can be made into a joke. We discussed that earlier. I pointed out that a joke is, someone or something is the butt of a joke. So either you're willing to accept that or you're going to be a humorless boob. Okay? And so, but there is a certain time and a place for things. You don't make certain jokes. You don't make certain comments at certain times. That's part of being professional. We are the human species. We are very intelligent. We've made it to the moon, supposedly. Just kidding. We did. But we've made it to the moon. And we've done many, many other things. We can certainly learn when and when not to say certain things. So back to my son here. So I struggle with this because I want him to learn that there's no such thing as a bad word, but there are words that are not appropriate at certain times. When he goes to school, he is not supposed to be talking about guns, right? Because the school has a problem with that. And I don't really get a say. Okay? So he can't go and be like, I got a gun and I'll shoot you with my Nerf gun. Then he might get in trouble. Okay? It's silly, but whatever. That's where we are. And so I don't look at it as there are bad words. I look at it as there's a time and a place for things. And as he gets older, I will explain this more once I know that he can understand the nuance. But if you're 27, you should already have learned some of that nuance. If you're 47, you definitely should have learned that nuance and you should recognize. So I think this statement by the young Republicans is appropriate. And is this language vile and inexcusable? In this context, I would say yes. Is there a time and a place to make a joke about anything? Also, yes. The more, the more offensive it is, probably the fewer places and opportunities you will find for such a joke. But I would argue and say there is a time, and there are comedians out there. That's their job, to joke about things, to kind of make a point. There are comedians that can make good jokes that are appropriate of very sensitive topics. The Holocaust, rape, murder, all of those things. And they do a good job of it if they're good. Okay? So I think this bolsters my point, which is, again, time and a place. So I'm not bothered by the young Republicans and what they had to say, but let's see what some others had to say about it. So we'll get to some social media comments here. And so here's what the internet had to say. All right. Turn some of this music down a little bit of that. All right. Tom Woods. Now I like Tom Woods, okay? I'm not trying to, nobody here am I trying to beat up on. I'm really just attacking any arguments if I disagree with them. Okay, he said this definitely will make the left respect you now. And he's talking about the young Republicans' response. Their response should not be, we're doing this so the left will respect us. The young Republicans should be making their response because they should say, this is not how we want to be known to behave when it comes to managing and organizing our political party. That's it. You don't, like if I say something offensive, it should be one of two reasons. Either I insulted somebody personally and I owe them an apology, or I'm apologizing because I am acting in a way contrary to what I've told people I am. That's it. Like, hey, you know what? If, maybe there's some episodes where I've said some bad things and then somebody calls me out and says, DL, I can't believe you would say that on your podcast. And I might say, you know what? I am better than that. I know better than to say those things on my show. That's not what I want my show to be known for. I apologize. That was inappropriate of me. That would be an appropriate apology. Okay? So I sort of agree with him. Like, yes, this apology is not going to make the left respect you. But it's not about the left. It's about your own integrity. And if the Republican Party is going to continue to go out and talk about how they're the moral party and talk about God and country and being respectful to women, caring about children, all these good things, then perhaps when they screw up, they say, yeah, we screwed up. That's okay. Right? And I don't agree that you should just run and apologize to the mob. In fact, I normally say never apologize to the mob. But that's only because a mob tends to be a bloodthirsty group that comes after you, and it's really about power. It's not about, holding somebody to an honorable standard. Let's see what else we got here. Tim says the left aren't going to stop, bro. Bowing down to them just makes them attack you harder. Kind of. The left is going to attack you no matter what, right, in politics, because that's what politics is about. And I think that the way to get around that is just to hold yourself to the standards that you claim you have. That's it. Like, if the Republicans want to come out and say, you know what, F it. We talk like, very foul comedians all the time. That's who we are. Right? When we go home, we don't. But when we're, okay, fine. Then present yourself as that. Don't present yourself as the moral party. Separate that. Say, yeah, we're moral at home, but when we're doing politics, we can be cutthroat and nasty. Fine. Then present yourself that way. Have some integrity. Let's see. Hodge twins, I think. This response is why we lose. No, it's not why you lose. You lose when you don't have integrity, or when you go too far, when you get too far away from the integrity that you claim to have. That's when you lose. I'll give you a couple of examples. Years ago, like in the early 2000s, there was a story that came out about some Republican. I think it was in California. It might have been. I don't know. It was on the East Coast somewhere or in that direction. But this Republican Party got busted because they had put some steamy. They went out to a very lurid nightclub, like one of those kind of like fetish type nightclubs with like half naked girls and stuff like that. Okay, totally legal as long as everybody's an adult, right? No issues there. But they went out to one, and then they spent like $2,000. There's like a $2,000 bill, and it got billed to the party's expense, and that got divulged, and everybody had a big fit. Okay, well, again, this is the party of we're moral, we have loving families, we don't engage in infidelity, blah blah blah. Well, it became a scandal because it's in direct opposition to what you say you are. So they start losing because people look and they say, you're a total hypocrite. You're in Florida. What was it, last year? Might have been the year before. I think it was last year. The chair and his wife of the GOP of Florida got busted because they were having threesomes with other women. Okay, why was it a scandal? It's not a scandal because they did it. It's a scandal because the party says, we are monogamous, family-oriented people, and then you have people hooking up and having tryst with other people in their marriage. Okay? I don't really care if you do that. I think it's a bad idea, but I don't really care. Like, if if consenting adults can do what consenting adults do. But be honest. If you're a swinger, just say, I'm a swinger. Just say it. Just be honest. Like, that's who I am. We have an open marriage. We don't. I mean, promise you we don't. But if don't pretend you're something you are not, because when you get caught, that is why you lose. Because people will not respect you for being dishonest and lying to them. You don't lose because somebody comes out and says, hey, we presented ourselves one way, we got caught acting an entirely different way. We apologize, and we'd like to rectify this. That's not really why you lose. Let's see. Comments pass the vibe check. We don't claim fake and gay cancel culture. Okay, it's not cancel culture if you're holding yourself accountable to what you claimed to be. Okay, this is not the left saying you guys are the moral party and then the right going, you're right, we are the moral party and you guys got us. No, it's the right saying we're the moral party, we behave this way, and then we find out otherwise. It's not cancel culture. Like, we abuse terms left and right, and it's ridiculous. It's not cancel culture, here for somebody internally to say, hey, we don't like this behavior, step down. I've told people in the Libertarian Party, step down. Inappropriate. Unacceptable behavior. You should know better. It's not who we are. I didn't tell them to step down because the left got mad or the right got mad. And you shouldn't. You should not bow just because the other side, your opponents, have criticized you. You should only bow if this is an issue of who you say you are. If you're something different, then start telling people that you're something different. It's really simple. It's not hard. Let's see. I love Carlin, but I think she's wrong here. You can never be put in any decision-making position ever again. No, this is the right decision to make, and for the right reasons. Because, let's be honest, the right, Republicans, they're going to continue talking about how they're the moral party. They're the ones that, support homeschooling and prayer and going to church on a regular basis, right? They support these things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you say that you're a church-going person and that, you believe in morality, you define how your morality is supposed to look, behave that way. Right? If you go back and you look during the days of the moral majority, like in the 80s and the 90s, Jerry Falwell fell not because simply he had an affair. That wasn't the big deal. The big deal was, dude, you're a preacher. You preach monogamy. You preach integrity in your marriage. And then you did literally the exact opposite. And so he fell, deservedly so. Let's see, Brianna Morello. We don't have to do this anymore. Trump is president. Oh. And what happens in 2028 when he's not president? What happens when you get a Democrat? Can you still behave that way? No. Why? Because your behavior is not contingent on somebody else. Your behavior should be contingent on who you say you are, period. That's it. Either that's who you are and then you tell people we're rough and rowdy behind closed doors and we say all kind of crazy things and you're just going to have to deal with it. You either present yourself that way or you present yourself as, hey, we're moral, we don't talk like this, we don't behave like this, and then you follow through and you behave and act in the way that you say you do. I don't cut up and carry on at the fire pit because, like, well, Trump's president and he says foul things, so therefore I can say foul things. What? Are we children? That is not even an adult argument. This ridiculous. Let's see. Lucy said, "No, never apologize." No idea what was quoted in the Politico article. What? And I don't care. No idea what was quoted in the Politico article, and I don't care. Okay. Why are you talking? Why have you said anything? You don't even know. They could have been in there and they could have been like, take Lucy Stone and tie a rope around her neck to a big rock and throw her in the ocean. Would you care then? I bet you would. You'd be like, whoa, wait a minute. What did I say? Right? No. Don't comment on stuff that you haven't even seen. At least take the... This is so frustrating. It really... Like, people will comment on anything and everything that they have not read and then wonder why they look like fools. Stop letting the left fire up the outrage machine. Ignore them. No, again, have some integrity. That's what you should have. If you're somebody, if you're billing yourself as a particular type of person, then act like that type of person. Why do we love Mr. Rogers? Because he acted like the person that he said he was and presented himself as. Could he get kind of tough with people? Yes, there was that. But he otherwise was actually the same nice guy that we watched as kids growing up. Okay? This is why people get frustrated. This is why people stop believing in other people. Because they present themselves one way, and then we find out they're totally different. Why do you think Bill Cosby went down so hard? Number one, because of the things that he did. That's already a bad thing. But number two, it made it even worse because we literally grew up with him being the good, wholesome family dad, the Jello guy, the guy who would be like, kids say the darndest things. Like everything he did was crazy wholesome. And then we found out this dark side to him. We're like, well, wait a minute. That's, so on top of the fact that he shouldn't have done the things that he did, we were more angry. We were even more angry because we found out that he wasn't who he presented himself to be. That's the problem. So yes, you sometimes do apologize when you're not who you say you are. I don't understand this. Andrew, the Democrat Attorney General candidate in Virginia, talked about murdering his political opponents and their children, and not a single Democrat has called for him to drop out. They want us dead, and you're self-flagellating for them over bad words and very stupid jokes. Okay, so there is a little point here. Yes, they are self-flagellating. However, these are two separate incidents. You cannot speak to one and say, well, you should drop out for saying foul things if you're not going to tell your own people you should step down for saying foul things. There's a funny little word here. Republicans might have heard it before. It's called consistent. You could also say principled. Also say integrity. That's what those words are all applicable. So if you're going to call for the other team to step down for saying foul things, which I don't have a problem with, I don't have an issue with saying, hey, this guy, he's no good, turn your face against him, bail on him. But be honest when your people say dumb things and say, you know what? You shouldn't have said it. I'm holding you accountable too. That's how you win, because then people start saying, this person is consistent and honest. I can trust them. Nobody trusts you when they find out that you're going to hold the other team accountable in ways that you don't hold your own team accountable. That's how you lose trust. Let's see. Bob Murphy. Now, I love Bob. He's a great guy. I've never met him, and I can't wait till the day I do meet him. And he's always out there just kind of his own anomaly. He said the difference between the young Republican text and the Tyler Robinson text is that the Republican ones sound authentic. It's true. It is true. Like these texts do sound real. And that's not necessarily a problem, other than, again, as I keep repeating, and I will continue repeating so that it gets through everybody's heads, is that it's about what you say you are. Bob is a Christian guy, and I've watched his comments, and he's pretty consistent in how he presents himself. And if all of a sudden we saw some text messages where Bob was like, F this person and that person, they can have a hammer dropped on their head and just said all kind of crazy, I would be shocked, and I would be kind of like, man, that's really unfortunate, because I thought Bob was different, right? Now, if Bob presents himself as a nice Christian guy online and then also says, hey, sometimes I can cut up and carry on with the rest of them when I'm around, when I'm having a beer with some buddies, okay, fine. I'm not going to be shocked. I'm going to be like, okay, yeah, I expected it. He told me. He told me who he was. He was honest, right? It's all about honesty. It really is. The redhead. Never, ever, ever apologize to people who want you dead. Okay, so again, this is not about apologizing to the left. You should not, and they should not be. You should be only apologizing if you are saying, this is not who we are, and we're very embarrassed that we were behaving in a way that contradicts what we told you we were. That's it. You're apologizing for your own behavior. And again, it's not all the time. If your behavior consists of, sometimes I do cut up, then you're not going to have to. Or if it's a one-off, if this was a whole article about like 3 text messages where people were saying some, dumb things, I would be like, yawn, boring, not a story. Because I'd be like, okay, three comments. But when you got 2,600 pages, even if you just had 2,600 messages, but it says pages, which I presume means There's more than that in messages. That's a lot. Okay? That's a huge amount. That means you are presenting yourself one way and behaving another. Either you have integrity, redhead, or you don't. Anthony Sabatini. Why do politicians even chime in? Like, just shut up. What an absolutely disgusting group of scumbags these young Republicans who posted this are. They should be shamed for the rest of their lives. Are putting out this. Oh, he wrote it incorrectly. They should be shamed for the rest of their lives for putting out this tweet. Weak and pathetic people. Yeah, Anthony, it's weak and pathetic to have a little bit of integrity and honor and say, that's not who we are. We're calling for people to knock it off. Anthony, as a California Young Republican member, I'm ashamed of the theatrics of the Young Republican National and all the people condemning today's political report. It's likely they forgot they killed Charlie Kirk and celebrated it. These people don't want an apology. They want us dead, tone deaf. Okay, look, I'm going to say it, and I'm going to mean it, and hopefully some Republicans out there will listen. Stop writing the death of Charlie Kirk. His death doesn't give you a license to be a jackass. Just stop it. It was a horrible event. And you got some people that were dancing on his grave, and then you have some of these other idiots who are using it as leverage. I don't want to hear anymore, a man died, and he was a husband and a father and a good man. You don't even mean it. His death to you is political leverage. Hello? You're disgusting, Anthony. This is a horrible tweet. This may be worse than half the messages that have been divulged in the Politico report. Because you are using somebody's death for your political advantage. And it's not even at least an opponent. If it was an opponent, then you're like, all right, this major figure that was our opponent passed away. And now that our opponents are in disarray. Take the advantage. Okay, I could at least see that. But to ride the death of somebody as if they're a carpet? The hell is wrong with you? And there's a lot of people that I've seen so many comments where people are like, oh, you forgot they killed Charlie Kirk. Okay, I don't know who you mean by they, but not all they killed Charlie Kirk. A single person killed Charlie Kirk. Other people were disgusting and they laughed about it. And we should reprimand them and hold them accountable on some level, appropriate level. But then we should turn around and we shouldn't be like, oh, this man was a loving father and a son and a husband. And then be like, by the way, we can get away with all this stuff. His death gives us a license to be foul and nasty, even though we say we're not foul and nasty, that we're better. You're a disgusting person, Anthony. And I mean it. I'm not taking that back. Mike Davis, stop being giant pizzas. I'm trying to be family friendly. I know. It's kind of like, I've gotten away from it a little bit, and I'm trying to get back because, especially when I had a friend of mine was like, yeah, I listen in sometimes and my kid's in the car. And I'm like, oh, great. Sometimes I cut up and carry on a little bit, and I don't mean to, but I get a little passionate, right? So I'm working on getting back to that, more family friendly, because that was kind of the point of my show, is that I got frustrated when I would listen to libertarian shows and they were like, F this, F that. And I'm like, man, my kid's in the car. I don't want him saying that. All right, stop playing by the left's rules. Okay, again, and then again some more. These are not the left's rules. If the Republican Party has billed itself as the moral party who is upstanding and professional, then they should act like it. Now, if they want to put a disclaimer out and say, hey, sometimes you might catch us saying some inappropriate things around the fireplace or an occasional message or two, fine, I'm okay with that, okay? Or if you just want to at least acknowledge, like, yeah, we're human. We sometimes say some inappropriate things. That's fine, too. But you're not. You're presenting this as if these are rules that you never had. But that's not the case. These are literally your own rules. You're just being held accountable for it. And now you're trying to hide behind it and be like, oh, well, that's the left's rules. They're trying to. No, they're yours. grow up and have some integrity. When Democrats force out Virginia AG candidate Jay Jones for his violent threats, then I'll start pretending to care about banter among college students. No, you won't. Don't even lie. No, you won't. Because if it actually mattered to you, you would hold them accountable regardless of what the Democrats are doing. Now, for me personally, should the Virginia AG candidate step down? Yes. He should step down. He should know better. He's a grown-ass man. He should act like it. Last one. This is my favorite. Sarah, you're awesome. Sarah Hignan said, in response to the Young Republicans, she said, this is a good statement from the org. So many people came to the right because the left went too extreme. Many on the right are now justifying the comments made because, quote, the left has done worse, end quote. Notice the problem. The justification of the extreme is what destroyed the left, and it will do the same to the right. She is absolutely correct. If this is who you are, then be who you are. That's fine. Okay? But that's not what we've been hearing from the Republican Party for many, many years. My entire life has been the Republican Party is the God-fearing, moral party. They should act like it. Does that mean that they can never cut up and say a bad word or laugh at an offensive joke or even tell an offensive joke? No, it does not. It does mean if you have a lot of inappropriate jokes, then perhaps you need to sit down with yourself and say, what's going on here? We're getting a little bit too far. Okay, but again, this is how they have presented themselves. And again, Sarah is correct in saying that the left has went too far and the pendulum, they went too far and they made the right angry and the right said, hey, we don't like this. We don't like how you've been treating us. And then the right turns around, and as soon as they get a little bit of social and political power, what are they doing? The same thing. And I'm like, I thought you guys didn't like that. And they're like, well, we can't let them get away with it. Okay, so you want vengeance. You're not out for justice. You're not out trying to make a better world. You're just trying to win against your political opponents, and that will backfire. You will lose. I'm going to kind of briefly mention this. There's an article from last year by Ann Coulter called "The New Baby Killers." Okay, this is kind of related. It's unrelated in terms of like speech and stuff. Pro-lifers and the Republican-assisted suicide act. So she's going here and she says, extremists have got to learn to take half a loaf. Just like the cheap labor-demanding GOP donors, pro-lifers need to be told, you can't get everything you want. If Republicans give you this, they'll lose their jobs, and the people who will replace you will want you dead. Unlike a lot of people complaining about the anti-abortion zealots, I am an anti-abortion zealot. That's why I'm begging them to stop pushing wildly unpopular ideas. These fanatics are going to get millions more babies killed when Democrats win supermajorities in both houses of Congress and immediately pass a federal law making abortion on demand the law of the land. Now, what in the world would this have to do with speech in text messages and whatnot? I'll tell you. What her article is saying to people is saying, look, you get a little win, stop reaching out for the most extreme version of your position. Because all that does is give leverage to the other team. Because people in the middle don't like it. And they go, oh, you're going to be extreme? Let me move over here. Oh, now you're going to be extreme? Let me move over here. You have to learn to control yourself. Just because the left maybe said some nasty things about Charlie Kirk doesn't mean that you now have a license to also say nasty things, especially when you condemned those nasty things. The right is getting some wins, which they will lose because they are simply doing exactly what Ann Coulter has pointed out in a different context, but they're doing it in this context. They're basing their behavior on what other extremists are doing. Oh, you were extreme? I get to be extreme. Except they're failing to recognize that part of the reason their opponents who went to extreme lost was because they went to extreme. And so now Ann Coulter is warning them. She's saying, don't go too extreme. You will lose. And then she goes on in that article And she points out, she's like, here's an instance where somebody was in the lead. They came out with a crazy idea. They lost their election. This person. And she names like 4 or 5 people who lost their election, even though they had the lead, but then they got foolish. They jumped out and went too far because they were winning, and then they lost. Learn the lesson at some point, people on the right. Or I'll laugh at you for losing because I'll just be like, I told you. Honestly, unless something changes, the trajectory that I'm seeing, I don't think it's looking good for the midterms. I think number one, midterms tend to be a losing time for the party in power. Like that's just kind of a natural thing. But I think the extremeness that we're seeing people on the right behave and act and the things that they're doing, I think it's going to catch up to them. And I think they're going to be handed a defeat in 2026. It's possible I'm wrong, right? Maybe they'll galvanize, but I'm just not seeing it. All right. That's my show. Let's get into some chat comments here. Let's see what you guys are up to saying. Let's see here. Let's see here. Go back a little bit here. That's quite a few. Okay, I'm not going to get to all these comments, but I'll get to a few. I'll get to a good handful before we get out of here. Let's see here. Oh, there we go. That's what. Keith says, I'll give this looks bad and reinforces my notion that people in general are just not too smart. That's true. And again, I'm not condemning them in the same way that many others are. I'm not like, aha, I got you. I'm just saying, like, look, present yourself as who you are and learn when to be professional and when it's okay not to be professional. That's okay. I have no problem with that. I don't have a problem if somebody catches you at the bar and you're drinking and maybe you've had a couple drinks and you're being a little loose-lipped and you're just like, yeah, those black people, they need to learn to stop fighting everybody at the, black on black crime or whatever, right? Like, okay, it's a dumb comment, but given the context, I'll be okay. But if you're in your professional life and you keep saying these things, I'm going to start wondering, how much how much of that do you actually mean? And then I'm going to have a problem with that, right? So, like, be smart, be wise, learn when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate. Some things might not, for you, some things might not ever be appropriate. Just depends. Okay? And look, Trump's winning the presidency, that's not going to last forever. So if you're riding his coattails and like, oh, Trump won, like that one person said, Trump won so we can say whatever we want, you are a fool. Let's see. What else we got in here? This is a good point. DJ Kunamitsu, I think. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Still, though, most people are, in my opinion, are not smart enough to separate what someone says with what someone actually does. That's true. Like, people already are not good at separating and saying, this is your private life, this is your professional life. And so then if you blur them even more, the people that were already having difficulty separating it, it's going to be even harder for them. You are basically handing your opponent a win on a silver platter. So stop doing that. Let's see. What else we got here? Must be difficult to be a comedian in this day and age. It's kind of funny. Mid-2010s? Maybe somewhere around there? A lot of comedians said, we're not going to college campuses because the kids can't take a joke anymore. Like, people were having problems with comedians. That's literally their job, is to make offensive jokes. Some comedians are doing just fine. And I'm not saying that, like, all comedy is dead or anything. I'm just saying, like, there are certain venues where it's their job, these comedians are like a lot of them are like, we're not going to college campuses anymore because they're just so uptight. And these are the 20-year-olds. And so if you've got 20-year-olds who are college age and they're trying to reach out to other college age kids and win, I mean, if the comedians are struggling, what do you think it's going to be for you when people find out you're making similar jokes and that's not your job? and that you're sort of tying them to potential policies. Like, you got to be smart, folks. And again, I'm not condemning them necessarily for what they're saying. Again, that's not my problem. My problem is I'm just like, you have to be wise when you say things. I will just say it right now. You can find where DL has said inappropriate things in some chats. So if somebody leaks a chat and be like, DL said this thing, I mean, you shouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I probably said a thing. You should be surprised if I make jokes in a more professional context, right? I'm not completely surprised, but maybe more surprised. Because again, nobody's perfect, okay? But I'm not billing myself that way either. That's a big difference. Let's see. Yes. I love this. Hit the like button, folks. Give streams like this greater visibility. Thank you, DJ. It's awesome. Yes. Help a brother out. Let's see. What else we got in here? Do. Yes. Keith says, during the last administration, it was a popular thing to say all white people are bad. I was about appalled. I was hoping we had gotten past the lazy racist thinking. No, we haven't. I'm sorry, we haven't. We really haven't. We're not there yet. We got a long way to go. Look at this. My VA lady. I'm late. I sure was hoping I'd see a super chat dollar sign this morning. Yeah, me too. We still got a long way to go, folks, but if you hit them, you hit the like button, you share my stream, you let people know, like, hey, you know what? The right, they're excusing this like crazy. The left is condemning it like crazy. But here's this guy named Liberty Dad. He cuts up sometimes too. Yeah, he said some inappropriate things on his show, but he's giving you the straight scoop on this and how you should think about it. Go listen to Dad. Help a brother out. You know, help me get to that next mark of 3,000 watch hours in the last 365. That will help me get to the point where I can get some super chats and just, you know, improve the monetization of this show. You know, with your help, this show will grow and my voice will become louder and louder. And then people will start saying, you know what? That Dad is right. I'm old enough now. I'm like 27 and I just realized Dad is right. That's how it works. Let's see what else we got in here. Wait, does DL have a new microphone? No, just a microphone stand. Since somebody was late, they didn't hear me talk about it earlier. So I guess you'll have to go back earlier in the show and hear about it. Just saying. Be on time. That way you don't miss out on all the good stuff. I tease. Especially since I was like so late that I didn't even do a show yesterday. What else we got? Let's see. From the abundance of the heart, you get the output of the mouth. That is true. You know, especially when you're upset or when you think nobody's looking, right? And again, this is tempered with saying that not everything that you say that's inappropriate is necessarily bad or represents some immoral issue with you inside of your heart. I'm just saying, like, you know, the more of it, the more skeptical people can be, you know? And this is especially if, like, as Keith says, if your claim that your morality is superior. If I walk around telling everybody what a Christian I am, and I'm not, by the way, but if I were to tell people that, and I were to talk about Jesus and how people should go to church and how my life has changed, and then all of a sudden you find out that I cuss out my son, or cuss out my wife, you're going to be like, none of what you said previously means anything because it didn't mean anything to me. Let's see what else we got. DJ comes back. He had to step away, and he said, did I miss anything? That's subjective. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Hopefully everything that I say is miss-worthy, but who knows? I probably got some rambling in there. That's okay. Let's see what else we got. Scrolling through. Joe says, I'm joining late too. And then he follows up and he asks, can you repeat everything? I sure can. So here's how it works. What you want to do is you want to take your mouse or your finger, however you're watching, and there's like a little red line underneath the stream, You'll see like a little red dot, and it'll be over toward the right. And what you want to do is you want to move that over to the left. Okay, and if you move it all the way to the left, then you can force me against my will to say everything all over again. And the really cool part about that is I will repeat it verbatim. That magic trick. It's a magic trick that content creators don't want you to know. All right, let's see. All right, I think that's it for the comments. Let me check the other socials. I think we're good there. All right, folks, that's all for the comments today. Thank you so much for joining. Hope you learned something. Hope you found this show, informative and inspiring. And whether you're watching live with me right now or you're watching later, come back, drop a comment, whatever thoughts that you have. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I need to offer a correction, right? Perhaps you just want to dole out the praise and say, DL, as I was thinking about your show, I just realized how brilliant and wonderful and intelligent you are, and I just had to come back and tell you that. That's fine. I understand. And I'll take it. It's a little uncomfortable, but I will accept it. I'm all ears. But with that, I'm going to be out for today, and I will be back tomorrow. Have a good one, folks. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and buy me a coffee, because every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.